we kind of draw the line in the sand and say, okay, yeah, we kind of changed our business philosophy in 2018 or whenever you guys were coming on board, because I'm going, okay, if we're going to bring in 3 more families, wives, and kids, we've got to grow the business. It's not big enough to do what we want to do the way that we're doing it. So yes, I give up control and I give up certain things that, that everybody sees now, and they see the things that you guys are doing and that we're moving forward. But those decisions weren't made in 2018. Mm-hmm. Those decisions were made when y'all were 12.
Welcome to the Blue Collar Broughs Podcast, a home service podcast focused on scaling family business and discovering what differentiates the best of the best within the home service space. Today, we are joined by the founder, the father, the man, the myth, the legend, the 1979 Blanchard State champion. He says he only had 1 interception. I say he has 2. Darren Yarbrough. Dad, glad to have you here.
Glad to be here, guys.
So today, I want to jump in to what got you into the trades, what made you stay in the trades for 35 years, and really just the story of Yarbrough and Sons. One from your perspective, and then we'll share ours as well, just on what we've done maybe differently than other companies within the space, and what you see coming forward as the differentiator, as a point of competitive advantage that other companies might be able to glean and learn from as we kind of have grown and tried to wrangle this thing ourselves.
I think probably I stay in the trades because air conditioning is all I know.
So let's zoom back. Let's jump back to 1982. Is that when you graduated?
Yep, that's
so
correct.
82. What was the deciding factor?
I think during the middle 80s, the oil boom was going on in Oklahoma, and everybody was working in the oil industry. And of course, I had a brother who had bought a welding rig, and he was welding, and so I was going to go to a welding school and be a welder. And in I'm not sure what it was, the oil industry died and everybody went bankrupt. And I thought, well, what am I going to do now? This was right after I graduated high school. And there was a air conditioner guy that was fixing Dad's air conditioner at the time. And I got to visiting with him while he was out there. And, if I asked him, I said, okay, where's the best school to go to? And he said, Oklahoma State Tech. And so I shaved my head, drank the Kool-Aid, and off to air conditioning school I went. And when I went, I didn't know anything other than you flipped a light switch and the light come on. And so knew practically nothing about electricity, nothing about refrigeration, and that's kind of the direction that we went.
So I've got a cool question. So your upbringing, Grandpa Jack, he was a trucker.
Yeah. And Grandpa was actually started out as a meat cutter.
Okay.
And then when I come along, I guess meat cutting wasn't paying the bills, and so he went to being a truck driver. Okay.
Like that was a whole lot better.
I'm thinking. I'm kind of thinking of your upbringing in contrast to ours. Was like our upbringing. We grew up in the trades, whereas you didn't grow up in the trades at all.
Right. Yeah. So, no, Dad. He didn't finish. I think he quit high school, or he quit school in the 8th grade. And then him and Mom got married when Mom was 16, and so Mom quit high school as a junior. And so anyway, so both of them, not having the, the formal education, my growing up was always, it was get a trade. That college was just for partying idiots, and so for me, it never was an option. If I was going to go to college at that particular point in time, I would have been a football coach. But I'm going, well, I don't know how, the stability and the moving around and stuff of football coaches, yeah. And then, and I didn't have that family support, to go do that. And so that was never really an option.
What offense would you have run?
Oh, wishbone.
We've been holding on to the wishbone in 2023.
5-2 defense.
And we're engaged in 8 every play.
Yeah. All this spread stuff.
Yeah. The Marvel series, the What If thing. I'm having the what if in my head of like, if Dad was a football coach, what?
You saw no hesitation, did you?
He'd have been summoned as Lou Holt. Let me tell you something, guys. Notre Dame Fighting Irish are going to win it all.
It's the bone all the way. All the way. Yeah. Oh, and so, so anyways, like I say, Mom and Dad didn't finish high school. And, of course, I had an older brother that was a welder. And that was kind of the direction that we went. So went to Okmulgee for, I guess, 2.5 years. Came out there with an associate's degree in air conditioning and refrigeration technology. And, and never wavered, and I think now, like you guys, going to a 4-year college and going that way. So obviously my opinion has changed. Going to a trade school and then getting in the air conditioning industry, I never wavered from that. And I guess the difference being when you go to a trade school, you're set on a career path, going that direction, to whereas when you go to college, you get a wide variety of just a taste of everything that there is out there. So
I think that's the differentiator too. Like today, I think it's kind of come full circle, is like in the gap between when you and Mom were growing up in college and where we're at now with college, and is we see kids coming out of college without the ability to get a job in their field of study, but that's oftentimes because their field of study is too broad, and so that we don't have a determined outcome for college. We don't know if it's to become a better educated society or for job placement. And right now it's very much looking for a better educated society, but we're not placing anybody in jobs. And so I think, that's something we've talked about. The bros have talked about is how valuable it is to know where you're landing. And so coming out of trade school, you didn't have to guess. You were prepared for one thing and one thing alone, which is a super valuable place to be. To some it might look limiting, but it for sure makes you know where you're going to land.
Something too that I've always kind of thought about was, okay, so you went to Okmulgee, did trade school, but then that teaches you how to do the thing, right? But it doesn't. Maybe you can correct me, but it doesn't teach you how to run a business doing the thing, because those are two very different things.
Right. Yes.
And so
very different.
Yeah.
And that's why most HVAC companies fail.
Yeah.
Because most of your owners are HVAC guys that come up from the technical world, and move in and they don't know anything about running a business.
Yeah.
So I think that makes a huge difference. Yeah. And the trade school, there's nothing taught about the business side. Well, there wasn't back in 1983. Maybe there is now. But in 1983 that didn't happen. You were talking, compressors and expansion valves and all that stuff. And so that's kind of the direction that went. So all of the business stuff came later. That came later. And also too, you can take a guy that's going to a trade school. Like I said, I went 2.5 years, to tech. And of course, and I come out of there, and really, I don't know if you can tell the difference from somebody that come out of tech, making an A average, or somebody coming out there making a C or D average. 6 months out in the field, I don't know that you can tell the two guys apart. There's just that much education that you learn out there with hands-on doing. So I think that if you can take somebody that's got a 4-year degree or somebody that's out of high school, and if they've got a great attitude, you can teach them, you can train them. And so if they've got a good work ethic and a great attitude.
I feel like the level of risk is different too, like compared to going to school and focusing on grades, whereas like, the real world risk of having a C versus an A, there's not much of a huge difference maybe between like maybe college placement and stuff like that. But for real world applications, like, on the real world where you're working, you're providing value for people, the risk, like, you got to know your stuff. You got to figure out what to do. And so I think that probably plays a pretty big role in, where the A plus student or the, C student, out whenever they're having to learn and their feet are to the fire, there's a lot more at stake in those situations.
And I think everybody wants to do a good job, and everybody wants to please the customer. So once you get out there and you're the man in charge over an install, or you're the man in charge over a service fix, there's nobody else that you've got right there in your hip pocket that you can go to and say, hey, what are we going to do here? You've got to figure it out. And you have 6 months of that, and you figured a lot of stuff out.
So, and it's funny because, like, growing up in this, I just never asked these questions, and so now they're popping in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, this. So okay, so you got out of tech school, and so what was your thoughts then? Did you think, okay, hey, I want to start my own business, or I'm going to go work for someone, or what was that?
Yeah, no, I never had the desire, to start a business at that particular point in time. Now when and HVAC guys were behind the 8 ball even back then. There wasn't enough workers out there for the amount of HVAC jobs that there were. So coming out of Okmulgee, I think we started with 75 I'm going to say kids, there was probably some adults mixed in there too, but we started with 75 folks in my first trimester electrical controls class, and by the time we got through, we graduated 26. So we lost that many people coming through. And so now that I'm graduating with 26 other guys, and we probably had 50 job offers, so I mean, the placement was great. And most of them, there was a lot of big companies in Dallas and, here and there, but, I was a Blanchard guy and wanted to come back home and, had a girlfriend at the time and wanted to see her, and so I come back to Blanchard and just went to work as a service tech for a company here. But at that time, never had the desire, didn't know that was an option probably.
Okay.
So what was that change? What flipped that switch to go from running as a service tech for another company to deciding, okay, well, I think I'm going to go out on my own and strike it and see if I can make it happen? Was it a matter of opportunity or service area, or like what was the ingredients that went into that?
I think the stars were probably aligned. I was working for a company and wasn't making the money that I felt like that I should have made, as techs do. I mean, techs work hard.
And what was a tech making back in?
They were making $7.50 an hour.
$7.50 an hour. What was minimum wage?
And all the coffee you could drink.
That's a lie. I remember stories you had to put quarters if you wanted coffee.
That's true. I might have embellished that.
How we remember the stories.
Yeah, I think so too. I think minimum wage was probably $3.50, $3.75.
Wow.
So $7.50 might have been a pretty good wage, at that time. But I didn't think that I was, making enough money there. And we had a plumber / heat and air guy in Blanchard that had just gone out of business or moved. And so we really didn't have anybody in Blanchard that was doing heat and air. And at that time, I had been doing it I got out of Okmulgee in 85, and this was 1988 at this point. So I'd been out there 3 years, and I had already acquired my contractor's license, so I guess sometime in there something must have clicked, and I thought, okay, just planning for the future. If I ever do want to do something, here it is. But at that particular time, you had to go take a test in every city. Whereas now in Oklahoma, you just take one test to be a contractor and boom, you're a contractor, and then you can be a contractor in any city. You just got to go buy the license. But at that particular point in time, you had to go take a contractor's test in each and every city, and so, a city could make it as easy or tough as they wanted to because it was HVAC guys that were in charge of the test of that city. So the state took it over, and then I qualified and took my contractor's test. Then. And at that particular point in time, I just did they have a limited contractor's license and an unlimited. Did I say yeah. So they have a limited and an unlimited. And so I think the limited contractor was you can work on anything less than 25 tons of air conditioning and less than 500,000 BTUs of heat. And so anyway, so I took that and I passed that. And so poof, we were a limited contractor at that time. And so in 1988, I quit over there, hung my shingle here, and that's where Mom and I started.
Gotcha. So going in, both feet first, and starting the business, it's easy to say we're in business. It's easy to say, just flipping that switch of, all right, Yarbrough Heat and Air is here. Mm-hmm. But, what were some unforeseen hurdles there in those early years that, maybe, looking back on now, it would be stuff that you'd tackle in 30 minutes. But during that time, was, oh my gosh, we have to do this. And it was just some things that you didn't see coming down the pipeline whenever you and Mom decided, hey, we're going to hang the shingle and start the business.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest part, guys just getting business registered with the state and doing all that stuff and getting the business registered as an entity and just keeping the books and kind of going from there. I guess I was kind of lucky on one aspect because growing up, and Grandpa on that Get a Trade, my brother and I, we hauled hay all through high school. And so we ran hay trucks. And so running my own hay truck, kind of set me up for success because I had hauled hay for 3 or 4 years going through high school. And since I was in charge of the truck, I would have to keep track of how many bales of hay we hauled and how much we were charging. And I'd have to get with the farmer afterwards and go collect money. So I had a little bit of taste of what was in that, on a small scale, just by running my own hay hauling business, so you kind of knew that. And then, of course, Mom answered phones and dispatched me, and I went and found I think it was a 1976 Dodge Tradesman van, it was an old blue bomb, that we had. And
I remember that.
I don't think it had air conditioning, and the defroster didn't work. And
we're talking like in modern terms of Mom answered the phones and dispatched him. But this is 1989. So dispatching looks a whole lot like here's a payphone because the cell phone doesn't exist. Service Titan, Sarah Systems, Field Edge, none of that is out there. So dispatch and all that looks a whole lot different than it does today.
That is correct. I hadn't thought about that. So I would take off with a pocket full of quarters and a pager. And, so pagers were a big deal. And on a pager, it just beeped and you just got a phone number. So you'd have to stop, find a payphone and call that number. You had no idea who it was. And so, mom might be paging me or whatever. And if mom went and did something, we also had an answering service that would answer the phones at night, or weekends or whatever. And so if it wasn't mom, it was the answering service, taking the calls, and they would page me, and then I'd find a payphone, stop with a pocket full of quarters. And then I had to call. A lot of times I might have to call mom or call the answering service to see what it was that they wanted. And then of course we got smart and just started putting the customer's phone number in the pager, and then I would call not having a clue what they wanted or who they were, and just call back, and here we would go. So sometimes you might have to plug 2 quarters in the payphone and call mom and say, hey, where we're going, and then call the customer and talk to them. So yeah. But then we advanced a little bit, and I got we had a 2-way radio that would reach probably about 15 miles. And Blanchard, Oklahoma is about 15 miles from Norman and Oklahoma City. So if I was in the city or Norman, the 2-way radio wouldn't reach. So then again, we'd go back to the pager method. And so we would do that. And at that time, I felt like that nobody would call us in Blanchard, Oklahoma, if they were in Oklahoma City or Norman, because 15 miles was just too far. Of course, now then we travel, 60, 70 mile radius of where we are. But at that time, Blanchard was long distance on a phone call to Norman. And so anyway, I got a Norman telephone number and just, paid for that. And then I put it on call forwarding, and I would call forwarding the Norman number to the Blanchard number, which was our regular base number. And then that would work. And I would pay for the long distance phone call. So a lot of customers never knew that we were actually in Blanchard. Because who's going to make a long distance phone call to call a heat and air guy?
Yeah. I think it's worth
Probably
noting.
not very many.
Yeah.
So I was pretty smart back in my day.
What's funny is I still have customers that I'll go meet and talk with, like, yeah, you guys have been in Norman for a long time, and I'm like, yep,
we had a number.
We've had a phone number for sure, but we're actually based out of Blanchard, Oklahoma. They're like, you kidding me? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But I think it's like we're saying, because Blanchard and Norman, I mean, if people aren't familiar with those two towns, they're literally 15, 20 minutes of a drive. Well, it's not that far.
And anymore, they're almost starting
connected,
to meld into 2 cities.
Yeah, it's kind of suburbs.
Yeah. But you look at the advancement, because our phone numbers in Blanchard back then, could you dial just the 4 numbers?
Yes.
Or was it?
No, I think at that time it had changed.
Okay.
Because back in 1974, when I moved to Blanchard, you could just dial the last 4 numbers.
Yeah.
So like our shop is 485-3470. You could just dial 3470 and get the shop.
You get Darren Yarbrough.
Wow. That's true. Yeah.
Because I laugh at that because, Bryce sitting in here with us, our marketing director, Bryce and I, we manage a lot of our marketing verticals. And gosh, it's not a stretch to say that we have 300 or 400 marketing numbers out there on any given campaign. And so, for pay-per-click or local service ads or our website or billboards, or everything has its own phone number. So that's a huge deal. That's a big difference between, then and now. Whereas buying a second line, that's a big deal. That's a big risk.
That's a big deal. Yeah.
Whereas now it's 2 clicks and we assign it to a campaign and we say, all right, now we can track what revenue we're getting from this individual vertical.
Right.
So there wasn't, it was referrals and name recognition, and that was how you had to build the ship. But again, you're saying that you're finding payphones. There's not a payphone one in Blanchard, America.
No.
So what, are we stopping at customers' houses? What are we doing?
Were there more payphones?
No, gosh, yeah, there's a payphone on every corner.
In Blanchard there was?
I don't think there was in Blanchard. I just drive home. But but if you were in Oklahoma City or you were in some other town, and even in Blanchard, there was probably payphones, on the corners at all the gas stations or inside the gas station or something like that. So payphones were pretty readily available, so back in the day. But I had forgot about just the four numbers.
Hey,
so
I have a quick question for you. Okay, so I'm not on microphone. I'll make this quick. Our technician Alex was asking, hey, why do we have so many phone numbers? And whenever I worked at so and so, we only had 1 phone number. And I explained to him exactly as Tucker said why we have so many, dozens of phone numbers. What's your take? When you started the business in '88, your phone number was your brand.
And I struggled with that when you guys started adding more phone numbers.
So
I hold it in. I don't say anything, but yeah.
What do you think that is as a generational thing? What What's your take on having several phone numbers versus having that staple phone number where people can kind of remember you?
Well, but I think that, I still think a lot of times, because it's on the jingle, call 485-3470, it's on there. Now then you got other phone numbers out there, people's not going to be able to sing that. How do you get that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in line with that, that's a decision that Bryce and I have made about 2 years ago, was on outdoor media. So that's billboards and our trucks. The legacy line, the 485-3470, will stay on all the legacy or on all the outdoor media. So everywhere that you can see the number in just out in public, it's going to match the jingle. The only places that it's not for the most part is digital or business cards. And at that point, you've had an exchange, you've had some sort of interface if it's on a business card, or digital. 99% of the time, you don't even get to see the number. You just click the call button and away we go.
Right. But I think that's a credit to me, when you guys stepped on, giving up parts of those things that I drag and kick and scream, because the proof's in the pudding. Since you guys have been here, the four of you, we've doubled in the revenue over the last 4 or 5 years, so we're doing something right. Yeah. And we have changed and added more phone numbers sometime over the last 4 or 5 years. So something is something's happening. So sometimes I just sit back there in my little corner office and shut up and do whatever it is that I do.
But too, that's probably honestly, like out of all of, we go to just trade stuff, and so that's a question I've been asked like lots. It was like, oh, was it hard to get your dad on board for stuff? And I was like, no, it wasn't. So just to your credit, like, I feel like you've given us a lot of trust and a lot of responsibility, and you've, I don't know, maybe it's just been mentally, like, if you've struggled with something, you've never really like, I don't know. It's never been like overtly struggling. It's always maybe it's just stayed in your head.
Duck.
Yeah,
like
that's real super calm on the top, but under the water, man, it's going to town.
But I will say, something too. Back to like 2018 is being the financial, the business college educated, side of the family. I got the business degree in college. Was 2018. We went to the Service Nation boot camp. And, that was the first time that I think Dad and I had a conversation of, because we all had the conversation prior of like, okay, something's got to change. Like that was kind of that watershed year of like, all right, we need to find out how to be more profitable. And I think these people can help us. And going down there.
And I think at that time too, to where up until 2018, when all you guys came aboard, I think Kobe started a little bit before that. When did you start?
2015.
Okay.
So I got out of college, so 2015. So summer of 2015, I started full time.
Okay. So, so sometime given, I knew that all three of y'all were coming on board, at that time when we joined the Service Nation, and up until then, we had been running along, and we were probably maybe a little bit above the average heat and air company. We were running net profits of, 5 and 6%, and that was enough. And, and of course, and I think that's just the mentality and the mindset between a technician going to a business owner versus actually running a business and trying to make a 10 or 15% net profit or whatever it is, that you're trying to do, so that's a big deal, and I'm ashamed to say it that I had been kind of looking at the Service Nation for maybe a year or 2 years before Tucker and I went down there. And, I think Mom had got the deal and brought it in there and give it to me, and I made a phone call and checked on it. And that the can I say what the entrance fee to get on was?
I think you can.
Yeah. It was $10,000 to join. And I'm going, holy smokes, for $10,000, I'm a pretty smart guy. That doesn't sound like a good business decision. I was wrong.
I think it was after that first meeting that we had. We were at the old American Airlines Expo Center. This is before Service Nation had their headquarters built out. And so we were in like this labyrinth of a hotel. The hallways were like 3 foot wide. Like it felt like we were in a ship is what it felt like. But then got down to our classrooms that we were attending the school in, and met just some we didn't know it then, but now we know legends in the business. John and Vicky LaPlante, Ben Stark, Larry Taylor, the Service Nation team. At that time Bob was the one running the training along with David Heimer and Matt Michelle, and so met some legends in the business, and they're up there telling us, here's how you need to price, here's your financials, here's what this needs to look like. And I mean, Dad and I are sitting there looking like an immigrant at the DMV, just like, what what is happening right now? Because, coming from the business schooling side of it, I knew the language. I knew how to read P&Ls. I knew how to read balance sheets and stuff like that. Dad's been reading those for 100 years at this point. But then to have, these legends of the business come up and start talking about, okay, here's where you make your money. Here's the differentiator. That was probably, I don't want to say it, like Will was talking about, it wasn't a fearful moment, but it was definitely oh my gosh, there's a lot of things we didn't know.
Yeah, there's kind of an aha moment.
Yeah.
Let me back up a little bit though. You're talking about relinquishing some authority or some control, from 2018 whenever we started doing all this, when all y'all joined, and it wasn't, we kind of draw the line in the sand and say, okay, yeah, we kind of changed our business philosophy in 2018 or whenever you guys were coming on board, because I'm going, okay, if we're going to bring in 3 more families, wives and kids, we've got to grow the business. It's not big enough to do what we want to do the way that we're doing it, so yes, I give up control and I give up certain things that, that everybody sees now, and they see the things that you guys are doing and that we're moving forward. But those decisions weren't made in 2018. Those decisions were made when y'all were 12. Yeah. It's the process of the type of kids that you were then. And so by the time we get to 2018, you're responsible. I don't know if I would say that you're all functioning adults at that particular point in time, but you're pretty close, and so and so so the decisions to do that, like I say, wasn't made in 2018 going, okay, hey, I'm going to turn this over and let you go and let you run with it. They were made as going through high school, going through college, and making those decisions.
Yeah. So we're kind of talking modern-ish era, but I want to zoom back through the story a little bit, and we talked about some of the early struggles. What was, all right, employee number 1, we're bringing on, we need help. What does that process look like? Because that's a big first step is, 1, a lot of trust factor. And then 2, deciding who to bring on, how you're going to bring them, what capacity you're going to use them in. What was that? Walk us through that process.
Yeah. I think probably, when we first started, I had an older brother that was 3 years older than me, and he is an Oklahoma City fireman. And he had a good friend that lived here in Blanchard too, Leroy McDonald. And he was Oklahoma City fireman as well. So it worked out great. Of course, I was beating my head against the wall full time. And then I had these 2 firemen that would work for me on their off days. And so, it started out going, hey, I need some help. And then just within weeks, it turned into, hey, I can use you guys all the time. And so I had 2 firemen that would help me on their off days. And so Rick and Leroy would go do installs, and I would go around running service, and if they had any problems or whatever, I could talk them through it on the phone, or, I may stop by and just help them get, and they did a great job, as far as duct work. I was able to teach that, and they got that down pretty quick. Sometimes the electrical part, would kind of give them problems, and most of it we could talk over the phone, but that was probably my first 2 employees. And Leroy is still with us today. He runs our sheet metal shop and our spiral. And so that would be, I don't know how many years that is.
30, 35, 36.
It's a long time. Yeah. It's a long time.
So that's that decision to hire, one, Rick and Leroy, it was kind of an easy one of, okay, just bringing your brother on board, but there's a lot of ego and a lot of, talking about family business. There's a lot of things that can go awry, as we've seen and heard through the grapevine, through Service Nation and Service World Expo and things like that. Bringing your brother, and especially just 1980, and 1980 family dynamics. Bringing your older brother into the business. So that takes a lot of grace and a lot of trust. Was there ever any tension between you guys as y'all were growing it?
And the way that you guys were brought up was the same way probably that that Rick and I were. Growing up through through our childhood. We never fought and never argued with each other. I don't know if Dad beat us or what he did, but it worked out well. Our relationship was great. Our relationship was pretty much about like what you guys are. So whatever the values that Grandpa and Grandma instilled in me and Rick, we were able to pass on to you guys. And so bringing Rick and Leroy on was never an issue, never had any problems, as far as, control or power over that. And it worked really well. And then from there, of course, in the first 10 years of our business, we were more a service business. We just did more service work than anything else, and did installs as they just come up. We really didn't do a whole lot of new construction, but we would just go do service work and then installs as they came. So our install list was really not the thing that we focused on the most.
And when you say, don't you think that that's kind of a mark of the industry, maybe?
I think probably
because
so.
like it's kind of changed. Because back in that era, even like cars and stuff, like you're talking washer, like appliance repairmen were a big thing back then. Whereas now we've kind of moved into more of we're replacing things. And if you're going to work on something, you got to have dang near rocket science degree to know how to work on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so you think that's just kind of a changing of times?
Yeah, I think so too. And so we rocked along there for about 10 years. In 1998, I think probably that sticks out to me. I don't know. But we had, I think we had like 10 guys or maybe 12 guys. And we probably had, 8 or 9 service techs and 2 or 3 installers.
Just want a personal story too with Leroy being employee number 1.5 is so Grandma Yarbrough would watch us after school sometimes, and just because of the age gap, I spent quite a bit of time just me and her, or me and whoever else she was watching at the time. She watched just some local kids as well, and she watched Leroy and Jan's daughters, and so it wasn't until I was probably 8 to 10 years old that I found out that they aren't actually my cousins. Like I just thought that was who they were. And so talk about a family business, like, all right, Leroy joins the business.
Yeah, I didn't know that Leroy wasn't my uncle.
Yeah. And then poof, Leroy's here and we got cousins. And it wasn't until I was 8 or 10 that I find out, oh wait, no, Leroy's just worked with Dad for 100 years and here we are.
Right. And some of them early struggles too that you talk about was, of course, starting out, as a young business guy, finding a major brand, an air conditioning brand that would go with you was tough at that time. Because you had kind of been, you work for one company, you leave and go in business for yourself. Over here, even though we were, 15 miles away, you kind of got the black ball from, the major brands, from Lennox, from Carrier, from Trane, from, so whenever I go start talking to these people, I'm going, hey, I'd like to carry your brand. You didn't have the background to say, okay, hey, you know what? Last year I sold $100,000 worth of equipment. Sell me your stuff. They wouldn't do that. So I had to start out with the secondary brands. The Concords or the whatever everybody's secondary brand was.
That was about to be my question. Are the secondary brands the same now as they were then?
Yeah. Probably not. Yeah, probably not. And of course, my brain just goes to the new secondary brands. I can't remember what it was back in 1988, but you had a hard time getting those manufacturers to jump off and go with you. So you got what you could and you sold yourself, and and I think a lot of times too, it depends on what customer you're after. A lot of the one-man shops, now that, of course, we've grown and we have 50 employees, and I think we are much smarter and we do a much better job of taking care of our customers than we did when I was a one-man shop. But there's a lot of customers, which some of them I still work for today, that they want Darren, and so those one-man shops get those relationships with those customers and they're tied to them. So that's how the one-man shop stays in business, is he gets those relationships and he runs with it. So that works pretty well. And then, of course, as you grow and you get bigger, we got 50 people and, so we've got a gazillion years of service backing us with all of the people that work for us, so we are so much smarter just in the whole industry, whether it's an install or whether it's a service, than we were back in 1988. Probably one of my best stories that I have was, it was just me, and I think at this particular point in time, Mom was gone to school, or she might have been working somewhere, but it was me, and I had a pager, and it could have been the answering service, I don't know. But anyway, got this call and went to this guy's house, and he had a dead compressor. And so anyway, so I'm troubleshooting it, and I get him all troubleshooted, and I said, Mr. Smith, I said, your compressor's dead. Come here and let me show you. And it was shorted to ground, and I went through all the tests, and showed him why and how I come up with the diagnosis that I did. I went back to my truck and figured him up a price, and I gave him a price and told him that we could do it tomorrow if that was acceptable. Anyway, he said, well, let me think about it and I'll call you back. So I get back in my truck and I'm going to my next service call, and I get this phone call from Mr. Smith. And he said, hey.
The fancy car phones.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. And this would I probably had to stop and find a payphone to talk to him. and he said, hey, Mr. Yarbrough. And I said, yes. He said, you just had a service tech out to my house. His name was Darren. He said, seemed like a real nice kid, and it seemed like he knew what he was doing, but he said he condemned my compressor, and he priced me a new one. I'll probably go that route, but do you have a lot of faith in this guy? And so at this point, I'm going, he has no idea who I am. And I said, oh, yes, Mr. Smith. I said, that was Darren. He's one of our best techs. If he told you your compressor's out, I'm sure it is. He said, yeah, I said, we can do it tomorrow. He said, okay, that sounds great. Anyway, put him on the schedule. So I went back the next day. I'm putting in his compressor. And he said, hey, I talked to your boss yesterday, and he had good things to say about you. I said, thank you.
Yeah. Compartmentalization at its finest.
Yes, that's true.
Proof that just an insatiable belief and desire in yourself, and you can fake it till you make it. Here we are.
and then after you got him cooling and got him comfortable, it was like you're not gonna believe this.
And did you come clean?
I don't think I did. I think I did.
Yeah.
I was a busy guy. I had more service calls.
So I was thinking too, because I feel like you talk about the running the business side of things, and I think this is probably more personal to me just because of the stage I'm life in. Like I've got three young kids right now. My oldest just turned 7, and then I've got a 4-year-old and then a 1-year-old.
Just turned 7 yesterday.
It turned 7 yesterday.
Happy birthday, Eden.
Yeah. Shout out to Eden on the podcast. So you're running the business, you're finding payphones, you've got change in your pocket, you've got a bag phone maybe, and there's no GPS. So you've got like a paper map, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
People saying, I live on the corner of this street, and it's folded out. But like you're also raising us at the same time. And I mean, these early days, like I'm 6 years older than Tucker, and I'm 2 years older than Colby. So, Tucker was born in 96, so to date Tucker there. So like, and I think a lot of times small businesses, they do really well, but a lot of times it's that like the home aspect, because that's the other side of the coin. Mm-hmm. So how was it like starting off running a business, doing all that, but then trying to be a parent, be like a husband that's there, and like because we talked last episode just about like that balance. Mm-hmm. So I guess just kind of share some insight on how that went for you and kind of what you...
Yeah. Of course, starting out, it's a grind. I mean, you got to put in tons of hours. There was, of course, lots of birthday parties that I take that back. I didn't miss any birthday parties.
I was going to say, I don't remember missing birthday parties.
but
not the ones I can remember.
Mom kind of called me the party guy, meaning that she would get the party planned and she would get it ready and she would do all the work and I would show up for the party. So I was the party guy, so I mean, I would be out there running service calls or doing whatever that I could do, to get things done and to make a living. And then she would do all the footwork, so to all the wives out there that are backing a guy like that, gosh, kudos to you, I mean, so that was always tough, so I never missed a football game, a baseball game, a birthday, but Mom did all the work, so she got those things, she got those things done and she got those things going, and now had we started I was 23 years old when we went in business. So there was so much that I didn't know. Had I known what I didn't know, we might not have done what we did. But in 1988, we had been married for 2 years and we didn't have any kids yet. And we didn't know any better. Our house payment was $336 a month. My pickup was paid for. Mom's car was paid for. She came with a 1982 Buick LeSabre diesel. So we didn't have, we didn't have any car payments. We didn't have a truck payment. And the old junker van that I bought, we didn't know nothing on it. I think we did borrow $3,000 from Mimi and Papa to buy parts. So I borrowed $3,000 from them, and away we went. So the grind of that is tough. So whereas now then, if somebody goes into business in their 30s, they're 35 or whatever it is, when they know more, and now they've got 3 kids, and now then they're trying to split that time, it's hard. It's hard. Luckily for us, I kind of grew as you did. Of course, we had Will in 1990, and Kobe in 92, and Tucker in 96. So I kind of grew, and it just incorporated as we went. Because a lot of folks come in here today, some of the girls that are CSRs or whatever, and they say, how in the world do you manage everything that you manage with everything that's going on? Well, I wasn't dropped into a $10 million company. I grew as it did. So it's a whole lot easier to do that, I think, than it is to jump in the middle of the fire and try to put it out.
And you were, like you said, young enough and dumb enough not to know how to do like risk calculus.
Yes.
So it was jump in and here we go, because it was you had us and the business, and it was just one and the same almost as we went along.
Yeah. And we kind of talk about like being risk averse, like your floor, or your ceiling is our floor of being risk averse, and so like we are very quick to make decisions, and we will often do all our due diligences to make sure that we are as educated in the decision that we're trying to make as possible. But I feel like because of what you've done and how you've built Yarbrough's, we are able to make decisions much faster.
I think so.
Well, it goes back to the phone number conversation, where it's like something that, you know, Dad probably would have wrestled with on doing or not doing. You know, me and my harebrain, because I started doing marketing numbers before we brought Bryce on board, was so I started adding marketing numbers like they were free, because they kind of are, and, you know, didn't even consider, you know, I knew, okay, we can't change it from the truck, because I did know that much, but like it was something that wasn't even a thought. And so it is that piece of like, there are things that you've done, and Mom, you know, you and Mom have done in your business careers, in building the business and the different arms that we have within it, that because we've grown up with it, like you said, they're one and the same almost. We see the operation as, well, of course that's what you do. Well, of course this is the next step. Well, of course this is the thing that is to come next. When in reality, you know, there's a lot of risk involved in deciding, all right, we're going to buy 5 acres out there on the highway. Right. Oh, well, to us, of course, we're going to do that. Right. You know, and now you're probably there as well. Of course, that's what we do. But zoom back to the early days, you know, bringing on 2 or 3 more people and having a couple extra trucks. You know, every day that you're in business, it's the biggest business you've ran. Every day that you're doing the thing, it's the most risk you've ever taken on. Right.
Right. And I think, too, it kind of goes back to, you know, where we talked about that 2018 kind of being the pivotal point of when we said, okay, we've got to grow. Before 2018, you know, there was like, I don't know what it would, Tucker would probably tell me, you know, there was like 6 or 7 years, you know, that we were a $4.5 to $5 million company. You know, 7, 8 years, you know, poof, that's what we were. And I think that we were a $4.5 million company because that's all I could do. You know, there wasn't anybody else making those decisions at the top, you know, and of course, and part of that time I was probably still in the truck part-time. Yeah. You know, we probably had 20 employees, you know, I don't know, you know, and so there was a lot of management stuff that wasn't getting done, you know, even though I could delegate, you know, the authority to, you know, our install manager or, you know, to our service manager. I think we had a service manager at that time. You know, it was still, you know, I was probably the bottleneck at the top of it, you know, so we had been there for that period of time before we said, okay, we got to go. You know, so now then a lot of the next steps are more obvious than what they were, you know, back when. And then I think too, you know, of course, you know, another aspect of our deal, you know, we've had several different businesses inside this business, you know, where we've built houses, you know, we've had ice machines, you know, we've sold ice, you know, so there's lots of things that we had done, you know, that was kind of those, I don't want to say harebrained, they were just different decisions that we did to add another arm onto the things that we do. You know, some of them were worked out well. You know, building houses worked out well. You know, we rented ice machines, you know, to different restaurants and stuff, you know, so we did that. And we bagged ice one time. And, you know, so just those kind of stories. I don't know if y'all want to get into all that too. You know, I mean, there's lots of other stuff that comes with it. So making those decisions to do different things probably, again, didn't just happen in 2018 when y'all said, okay, let's do this. Yeah. You know, it was small bites from.
So, and being, oh, so go ahead.
Yeah. So real quick, I think, and this may be just a kind of like a one-off comment on just things you said, and then you can go ahead and ask your question. But I think that's where a lot of people get in trouble is when they are starting a business like now, and they see someone that's doing it successfully, and they immediately skip the growing years, and they're like, I want to go do that now, run a $10 million company now. Well, you know, and then so they don't grow with it. You know, and so you skip a lot of those lessons that you learned early along the way. And so I don't know, right now it's just highlighting how important it is how important the process is. And for like long-term success, it takes a long time. You know, you've got to be willing to put in the time.
To onlookers, Dad's a 59-year-old overnight success.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, but I think it goes back to that. There's a verse in Proverbs talking about, you know, to what is gained quickly it will be lost. You know, but that which has grown slowly over time will last for generations. I'm paraphrasing it horribly there, but I know it's in the middle of Proverbs. Yeah. But, you know, it's that verse of like the grind, the growth. It takes time, and then eventually, once you reach a certain point, it's like, oh, you're an overnight success. Cool, right? So what I was going to say though is, so being born in '96, I don't really remember phase 1 of Yarbrough and Sons, and at that time Yarbroughs, hardly at all. And I think it's kind of poignant because, you know, this private equity venture capital world moves in cycles, and so you saw it come across the nation in 1999. You know, and so what is, you know, at that point, what does Yarbroughs look like? What's the kind of what economic drivers led to the private equity sweeping across the nation and doing what they did, and then kind of what was the deciding factors for you and Mom of, okay, here's where we're at, and here's the decisions we have to make in order to keep the family going and to keep the business float and all
Right.
that.
I think, and I remember just some numbers that kind of stick in my head. In 1998, private equity was kind of coming across the country, buying small heat and air companies, and and we sold. Well, I think we had two contractors that owed us money that had went bankrupt on us in '98, which at that time was, I don't know, $100,000, and and at that time too, we were a $1 million company. No, I back up. We hadn't quite made $1 million. It was always like $992,000 or something like that. We hadn't just made that $1 million threshold.
Ceiling.
Yeah, and that's kind of a ceiling to step over. Making that first million's tough, and then you kind of hit a step and you keep going. And so we had two contractors that went bankrupt on us and owed us $100,000, and we had like 8 or 9 employees at that time. And I remember just the grind was just wearing me out. I was tired, and so they had offered us a little bit of money to come with them and help run their their commercial department. And so we sold to them. And so we paid off everything that we had here and moved over there. And it gave us a little bit of money to go do some other things that we did. But
It's kind of when the house building launched.
Yes, we bought 40 acres and we developed 40 acres and sold it off, built a few houses on that. And so I went over there and ran their, helped run their service department after another guy that I had followed, kind of set me up and showed him. I guess I was kind of second in charge over there on that. And so after I'd spent some time there, I kind of decided, okay, you know what, I'm not such a bad business guy afterwards, and missed, a lot of the stuff that we had before we had sold. And so I quit and come back and hung our shingle. And, I had the non-compete, where I couldn't go back in business for a couple of years. And so during those couple of years, we built some houses and did some construction stuff. So that's probably where that come in line. And then after the non-compete had expired, then I told Mom, I said, okay, let's go back in the heat and air business. Okay, well, it gets worse. I said, we'll just do what I can do. We'll stay small. Well, I'll come home at 5 o'clock. I won't do any more commercial refrigeration, because that time we were doing like some grocery stores and a bunch of convenience stores, and it seemed like the commercial refrigeration is kind of what kept you out late at night, because when a freezer goes down, you got to go. So I said, okay, no more commercial refrigerations. We'll just do what I can do and go from there. So she reluctantly agreed. I don't know if it was reluctant. She was on board and kind of let me do what we needed to do. And so we did that, and we didn't stay a one-man shop very long. So we grew. And I guess that would have been in 2001 or 2 or something like that, and then moved on from there. So.
Yeah, because I was trying to think, because during that time I was like 11. In 2001, I was 11, and so I'm remembering that phase of building houses, and it was just, for me, I've my role has changed within Yarbrough and Sons multiple times, and so because we've built several houses and learned from you on that front, and I was just thinking about how many times I've moved, in my life. I'm 33 and I've moved 28 times. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that's just something that. That you and Mom have done a good job on, is y'all were never afraid of like just hard work. That's something, a phrase that you guys have said is, whenever we talk about something and just the effort involved, the phrase is, it's just work. It's just work. I
think my go-to, the phrase that I thought of whenever when you said that was, I've always been able to outwork my stupidity. So any mistake that I have ever made, I've always had the good fortune to be able to outwork my stupidity, and it's true. So yeah, we're in. Talking about growing and through the years and just the different thing that comes with it. When Will joined us, him and his wife had spent some time overseas, and he had a saying that would come back that was a wasta. If you have wasta, if you have clout with somebody, if you have stroke with somebody, if just I think probably stroke or clout.
Those are two good words for it.
Would be the right word. And of course, Will, he's kind of shadowing me, and we're going and doing this. He said, okay, Dad. He said, how do you do this? How do you have wasta? How do you have stroke with everybody? Because he said, you can pick up the phone and you can tell somebody, hey, bring me $100,000 unit. Thank you very much. Goodbye. and poof, the next day we've got $100,000 unit sitting on our house, sitting on the property, and again, and that didn't come overnight either. It was 25, 30 years of relationships and doing and going. And so, yeah, it does. It takes time. It's not an instant deal.
That uncomfortability that comes as, again, timeline wise, 2001, 2002, we're restarting. I'll FedEx some numbers for company history wise for us. 2001, 2002, we're restarting. You and Mom have always been early adopters to technology. I don't know if you guys realize that. Y'all might be reluctant to give that credit to yourself, but you've always been pretty early adopters on technology. We've been on QuickBooks. It seems like since the foundation of time. We can go back in a couple different company files, and I can trace us back. Back to the founding again on our financials. It's a little bit different. There's things that we've learned and reclassified, and so getting the real picture sometimes is a little bit more difficult. But that's the company we were then. You guys were super early in on iPads and mobile dispatching. We bought iPads. I think it was a year after the iPad came out and had cellular data. So we went paperless for dispatching and paperless for our text to invoice, super quick. And so we have this propensity to adopt pretty quickly, so that risk, something has changed a little bit over time, of like, all right, we're willing to take the risk as long as it makes sense. Mm-hmm. And, the mobile dispatching, not fighting the paper invoices and things like that. It allowed us to move more like a speedboat rather than a ship. But we grew pretty quickly to that $4.5 million cap that you talked about a minute ago. Was 2002 we founded, and then it wasn't, it was 2008, 2009 when we hit 4.5 million, 4 to 5 million. So within 7 years there, we're at that cap that we were at for the next 6 to 8 years. 2008, 2009 was really when we broke that $4 million mark, and then we stayed stagnant there until about 2017, 2018. And so, we talk about all these different companies. We mentioned a few of them in the last episodes. If we look at these other companies and the sizes that they are, but forget the timeline and forget how quickly they might have scaled as well. Because looking back, to go from nothing in 2002 to a $4.5 million company in 2009, 10, that's breakneck speed. Mm-hmm. So was there any point, during that growth where it was, oh my gosh, okay, what are we doing? Of having to regroup and kind of circle the wagons, because you can't just have the 8 or 9 people doing 3 to 4 million. You've got to have a pretty substantial base going on.
Yeah, and I think that was probably just out of dumb luck, growing, at the rate that we did, and probably I never necessarily had a plan, Now then, in today's world, okay, it was probably there in yesterday's world too, about having the KPIs of going, okay, well, you get this big, you ought to have this many service techs, you ought to have this, you ought to have that, these people should be doing this, those benchmarks that were there, so back in my early management days, it was, we did this and we didn't hire another phone call taker until that one was just snowed under and couldn't take any more calls. So we would bring back on, and it was probably, when that CSR would come to me and she said, okay, Darren, I need some help or I'm going to quit. And that was my kind of aha moment going, okay, well then we better get some help because I like you.
You're good people.
Yeah. We want to keep you, we want to make you happy, and so that was probably how we did it, and then as far as hiring another tech, we probably, when all the rest of the techs were working, till 7, 8 o'clock at night or whatever, and then they're going, okay, hey, we need some help. We can't keep up. Then we would bring on another tech, so we'd go that way. And even though I say that, and it was, it was hard on people, we must have been doing something right at the time because our turnover rate was minuscule. Nobody ever quit, so whatever I was doing. And I think it was probably because I've kind of taken the philosophy that has rolled over into today, to where you always treat people the way that you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. So even though the techs may have been, working hard, and which they still do today, at that particular point in time, I was out there with them. I was in the attic with them. I was, And of course, you do that as much as you can. And then finally it got to the point to where I would say, hey, let's go over here and let's do this, or then we might have an install going over here. And I'd say, hey, I'll show up and help you guys in a little bit. And I would show up, and by now cell phones have been going on. And so I spend all my time over there on the sidelines talking on the phone. And then at the end of the day, when they're done, they're going, yeah, boss, thanks for the help.
Yeah. I'm trying to strum up business for you tomorrow, buddy.
We're trying to make sure we have a home.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
And so as that goes on, having been in the field, having done the thing, at what point do you make that decision of, all right, if we're going to continue, if we're going to grow, I need an install manager, I need a service manager, because those decisions, because again, you're kind of weighing that your install manager is not really going to go out in the field and do the install. Now they're going to go out and help people get out of a pickle. They're going to go and do the thing, but the service manager is going to be playing phone tag most of the time. Mm-hmm. So how do you get over justifying that in your head of, all right, I'm going to relinquish some of these phone calls from myself, and I'm going to hire this guy to do some scheduling, do some tech support, some help. But for the most part, they're going to be 70% office side, 30% field side.
Yeah, and I think that was probably Mac was our first install manager. But let me back this up.
And still is our install manager.
Yes, that's correct. Mac was our first install manager, but he was also the service manager at the same time.
He was our first manager.
Yes, that's true. So it wasn't that poof, I made him install manager. It was okay. It was a conversation that we sat down and said, okay, at that time, I don't know, I had 4 or 5 techs and, 2 or 3 crews, going. And it was to the point to where, we did that to where I'm probably, maybe still going out on trouble calls where guys are having a hard time and can't fix something. And then I'm trying to order all the equipment for the next day and still trying to help the girls with scheduling. And, so when it gets to that point where I can't do that and still drum up new business, I'm going, okay, I got to bring somebody in, and then of course, Mac, his mentality is the same as mine on a lot of stuff. And so, it was just a natural, obvious boom, set Mac in that position. And he never misses a beat, never misses a step. He may not be the fastest, but he's pretty fast. May not be the fastest at doing something, but he never walks around with his hands empty. It's boom. And he was no farm guy, and he went to tech the same place that I did. I think I'm like 8 or 9 years older than him, but so our mentality was the same, and just our general personality is the same. You can't face him either, so we put him into that position at first, and like I say, he was a service manager, and he was also the install manager. So you did that and rocked along, and again, you did that until Matt comes up and says, "Okay, I can't keep up.
I'm drowning.
Yeah,
I'm getting ready to quit."
I always think about like the transitions of going from I think about like the point of like, okay, you're trying to help the guys out in the field, but you're also making phone calls. I always feel like the transition for whenever I switched over, because I worked for, I think Tucker, this is kind of true for Tucker as well, a little bit less for Will, just because of the timing of whenever we got here. Whenever I got here, 2015, like I was in a truck. We were running service trucks. And so I always felt it was a very different, I was more nervous about the transition getting out of the service field and saying, okay, now I'm in a sales position, and you kind of have that like imposter syndrome. You're like okay, well now I got it. Like now I'm gosh, I've been here. I've worked for you growing up since I was 15 years old, but like now I'm transitioning into a more of a project management sales position
when you're in charge of other people.
I know, and so that was a big deal. And so for me, like I was always nervous, and so it was really cool, and I was always thankful for how you led, and I wanted to try to find ways to implement that within just the sales position, which is like leave from a service point. Like you are like yes, you're a salesman, but you are a service person first. Mm-hmm. That your job is to serve the people around you and serve your team as best as possible. And so, but it was kind of scary, like making that choice. All right, now if because it was like, hey, do you want to do this? I was like, sure. And you're like, all right, great. And then the process started happening. Mm-hmm. And so,
and now if you don't sell something, we don't have work for.
I know. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so the change of responsibility was a big, I'm thankful for, and I've always felt like you have done a phenomenal job ever since we were growing up and then in the business and just watching you work, is that your power to delegate is, I think, better than the majority, like better than everybody's. Like you have your power of being able to delegate and let go. And it's may have been a process of getting to that point, but I think is one of your superpowers, where you basically say, hey, I'm going to delegate. I'm going to give you responsibility. I'm going to let go. And as long as you make decisions on purpose, then I'll be behind you. And so like going out in the field and in that transition of in the sales, and whether it's me, Will, or Tuck, or any one of our guys, like you do a phenomenal job of just like, that delegation into that point.
Boiling it down is just very quick to say yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that probably started, as an owner / service manager, in that first 10 years, that we just had more service guys than we'd had install techs, probably a lot of that came from the fact to where, on equipment, there's lots of different ways that you can start troubleshooting a piece of equipment. Some guys started the condenser and start moving their way that way. Some guys started the furnace and start doing this way. Some guys started the thermostat, and I'm going, I don't care where you start. I don't care how you do it. I didn't want to micromanage guys to the point to where they couldn't make a decision and do things on their own. Like I said earlier, when you're the man in charge and you're out there on the job site, talking about a guy that's been out of tech for 6 months that made an A or somebody that made a D, in 6 months, you're not going to know the difference because they're out there on the job site and they're learning that. And I don't care how they do it. As long as we both come to the same conclusion at the end, and as long as we're right and we take care of the customer. So I think that those decisions and relinquishing some of that power probably came from that. And then of course, and just like, our sales guys, whenever we sell something, the sales process, you can do it lots of different ways. And so it doesn't matter what direction they start. Now that I think we've kind of got it more fine-tuned, that we want everybody to do the same thing, but in the beginning we didn't do that.
So, Will, whenever you're looking at like what the game plans are, how do you decide? Especially, for the guys, that's one thing. You kind of touched on that, but what's the game plan? If we didn't join, what was that?
Oh, you know what? I don't know. Yeah, as far as like an exit strategy or what happens whenever I get older. You know what? I don't know. Because when y'all joined, I don't know, how old was I? I'm 59 now.
So 2015, how old were you when
64, 74, 84, 94, 04.
14.
I'd have been 50. I'd have been 51.
Yeah.
And at that particular point in time, and I've been pretty fortunate, that my health has always been pretty good, and so retirement really wasn't in the big scheme of things. Of course, Mom and I had gathered up some rental property, through the years. And, of course, we got this building and we got the sheet metal shop and we got a couple of rent houses and all of that. So kind of my retirement plan was, live off of rental property. So I don't know that I had an exit strategy at 51 years old going, okay, when I get ready to retire, this is what I'm going to do. That probably didn't come until we joined the Service Nation, and kind of started going that way and going, okay, you know what, I'm, 50 whatever.
Well, even then, your retirement plan looks rather unconventional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And, and of course, we had a 401k and, we'd throw money into it and stuff. And, so yeah. So I felt like that, okay, we had a couple of options that we could go whenever we get ready to retire, but I don't know that I had ever thought, okay, yeah, a business is worthy to sell.
Mm-hmm. This is a little bit of a transition from just the business side of stuff, but it kind of comes back.
Like we talked about in the last episode, there is no separation.
Yeah, there is no. So like,
it's just diversification.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Well, it's cool to see because, okay, just how that hard work and how that translates is really pretty cool. So whenever Meg and I, we lived overseas, Mom and Dad, they came to visit us, and we lived in the Middle East, and it's not a super like easy to access kind of place. And so Mom and Dad came and visited us, and anyway, it was so good just to like see you guys, and I think we just watched movies. I think that's all. Just
played cards,
watched movies, and it was winter, so there's not a whole lot was happening. But one of the things was we had a family that lived in a city about 3 hours north of us. It was kind of hard to get to. But growing up, we always went to Colorado, except for just family vacations, because getting off during the summer is super difficult. So took winter vacations. Well, anyway, the area we lived in, it snowed the winter. There's mountains and stuff. And the city that this family is moving to, they had to leave for some security reasons. And we having moved 28 times, you know, it was fun just to get to see stuff that like you had already been doing in the business, and like just helping people move, or moving yourself. We got to go help them move. You know, we spent a day up in this city, kind of helping this couple. And so it was cool to see, even though like you were outside of your element, even though I was outside of my element for that period of time, getting to see how that like translated over into so many different things. And I think that like when you're a part of that process of learning to grow, and you're doing air conditioning stuff, but you're also building houses, but you're also doing ice. And so you just, you know, you're not pigeonholing yourself to one thing. How that translates, and you're able to bless so many other people because of the things that you've taken on and the responsibilities you've taken on. You know, and so I think that's like, it's led to a lot of really unique opportunities for like just in serving people in general. You know, and I think that's translated over to us is, you know, we've gotten to be a part of that process with you, you know, and so we've gained some of the stuff along the way, but now we're in a different position where now we're trying to, at least for my part, you know, I come and ask you all the time, like, how do you know everything that you know? You know, I was like, my brain works very linearly. And so I'm like, if I could just have like a book, and you're going, I don't have time to sit down and write a book, you know, but just getting to shadow you, probably the most out of us three, you know, that's something that one that I've not just taken away, but two, just been, it's been such a good process for me, you know, at this stage of life that I'm in, you know, just to kind of see how you've gone through that process. And now I'm kind of going through that process too. And so it's been really good.
But I think too, we kind of call Will the procedure guy, you know, because he wants that structure. He wants to follow that procedure to do this and to do that, you know, and so, you know, and at first, you know, which led me to sit down, you know, and I'm sure that others in the industry have done it for years, you know, as far as having an install guide, you know, of doing this, or, you know, or whenever we get ready to go sell a package unit on a roof or something, you have that checklist of things that you go through the checklist to find out what it is, you know, and so Will's persistent on that has forced us to start writing that kind of stuff down, you know, and so now then here we are 4 or 5 years later, and I think we do a whole lot better job of that because of the persistency.
And real quick, just what started that was we were building houses, right? And so Dad, you've got the stem wall of the house, but Dad was like, hey, make sure you get a stick of PVC and you set it down here. And at the time, there was no concrete. It was just dirt. And I'm going, why in the world are we setting a piece of PVC down? He said, because you're going to have to run water lines. You're going to have to run all this stuff. And this is going to give you a hole where you don't have to bust concrete. And so like that kind of stuff, I think is just, you've learned that along the way. But
you know how I knew that?
Okay, how?
Busted concrete.
Busted concrete, yeah, exactly. How do we make good decisions? Bad ones. Yeah.
Old bull, young bull.
Yeah, exactly. But it's all of those various different things, and something too that I call it. Well, from my perspective, it's a dadism, but I guess a Darrenism.
People around the shop. Just
Yeah, Darrenisms.
Or at their most boiled point, if all of us are using them, it's Yarbroughism.
Yarbroughism, yeah.
Yarbroughism.
But like that
Just
ability to like,
regurgitated Darrenisms. That's what that is.
yeah, to like to go kill something, drag it home, meaning like providing just stuff for that day. But like, where did you hear that phrase somewhere, or like did you come up with that by yourself?
Yeah, I don't have a clue. I mean, I was always grown up with it. Yeah, our grandpa always hit me with, if you're busy rowing the boat, you don't have time to rock it. And that's true today. I think a lot of people, I start to say young people, but I don't necessarily think that. I think a lot of people in general, you know, have too much time on their hands. You know, they need to get to rowing the boat.
Yeah.
You know, because if you're rowing that rascal, you don't have time to rock it. You know, you don't have time to make waves. You know.
And I think one of like I'll call it a Yarbrough superpower or a Darren superpower is having the ability to do any task happily. You know, like I think growing up, whenever you would send us to do whatever it was, whether it was, you know, laying concrete, laying floors, putting siding, painting, polyurethane,
picking up rocks,
cleaning up construction sites. You know, I think one of the things that you kind of instilled with us is like, I never in my memory were you unhappy doing something helpful.
I think that's a God thing, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
just to
Yeah.
be joyful in whatever
Yeah.
whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's bad. It's like a bad heat and air job, where you're having to crawl through attics and you got insulation down your shorts or whatever.
Yeah.
And when it's over with, it's kind of over. I mean, you're going, well, that wasn't too bad. So I mean, yeah. I mean, so I mean, there's things that have to be done if you're serving people and whatever you're doing. But that may be, the same stuff too, to whereas it may be like the Trace Adkins song of She Thinks We're Just Fishing, to where I enjoyed scrapping with y'all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because I was scrapping with y'all.
Yeah.
So I never mind scrapping or whatever it is that we're doing because of the people you're with.
Right.
And so whether that be y'all or whether it be, somebody else, another service tech or an install crew, it's the people that's in the foxhole with you that, everybody's taking a bite and doing something crappy, but at the end of the day, you've done something productive for somebody that needed it done. And we were productive that day.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like I think it's funny. We talked about a little bit about tenure, that nobody quits. Our average tenure is within the trades is kind of crazy. It's like 7.5 years, even with the growth of adding 25-ish, 30-ish people in the last 4 years or so. Our average tenure is still really high, and it's because we've got guys like Mac and Danny and Crockett and Stephen Swain and Keith and Karen and Joe. These team members, and Leroy, he brings the average way up. That have been with us for 14, 15, 16, 18 years. Who've made that investment, so much so to the point where the Darrenism or the Yarbroughism is passed in and percolated into who they are now. Because I remember picking on our service manager, back whenever I was running service, Swain was a service tech as well, and he and I were up at some bar and grill doing a walk-in cooler. And the only way you could get up there to unscrew the head unit that was in that cooler was 18, 20 inch gap where you're squeezing your fat butt through there and getting after it. And working inside of restaurants gives you a whole new perspective on eating out at places. But we were at this this little bar and grill and climbed up inside of there, and it's just got cake dust and greases trapped up there, and the whole place just kind of it's like somebody's got talc powder and just got it all wet. And so we get up there, and Swaim and I are standing on our head, and one of our other service techs is down low trying to unscrew it and help us manhandle it. And we're up there, and we climb out, and I mean we are just slick as a pig. I mean just absolutely covered in grease and dust and all sorts of other stuff. And Swaim starts chuckling and just starts laughing, and I was like, "What are you laughing at?" And me, I'm at that time I'm a 17-year-old kid, and I'm like, "Well, this is ridiculous. Let's just sell them a whole new stupid walk-in. This is crazy." And
start over with something clean.
It'd be better for the health of society if we did that. And starts laughing. Once we got out, and it was hot in there, and he starts chuckling. He goes, "Well," he said, "it wasn't that bad." What are you talking about? It's not that bad. We got to go back up there. But it's that mentality of the people that you get to spend time with. Because that could have very easily been a crappy day. If his attitude sucked. I was 17 years old, and I was one stone's throw away from being on either side of the fence.
Right.
But Swaim to be come out of it chuckling, saying, "Wow, that wasn't too bad." His whole laughing point was, "All right, we sent two of the largest men in the service department up on top of this walk-in." And so it's it goes back. We've said it before. It's the "how you do anything is how you do everything" quote, and because that's been the expectation and the standard. There hasn't been micromanaging. The management that you and Mom have instilled has been through personality trait and through character trait more so than job function, which is I think that's how you can build that winning culture where your soon to be service manager comes out of a crappy job where we've been on top of this walk-in for 5 hours trying to get it loose, laughing. That's a big deal.
Yeah. And I think that's one of them deals, where you just got to figure out how to get it done. Because had Swaim had problems or whatever too, and he'd have called me, and if I'd have come out there too, been a pretty big guy myself, I'd have crawled in the hole and we'd have got it fixed. And so I think a lot of those, the people that we have, they don't want to disappoint either. Whether they don't want to disappoint me or whether they don't want to disappoint the customer, we're going to figure out a way to get it done. Another funny story that made me think of that when you were talking about restaurants. I was working at a restaurant one time, and I was working on this reach-in cooler, and I stand on top of my 6-foot ladder, and I was squashed between the ceiling and the condenser, and I was working away up there, and it was probably, I don't know, it was probably 110 degrees in this restaurant, and there was this little girl down below me, and she was slicing onions. Well, anyway, so she's slicing onions, and that onion scent just rose to the ceiling, and I'm up here, and it's really, really hot. And so I'm working on this thing. Well, anyway, I get to crying because these onions are just in my eyes. I cannot see squat. And so anyway, so I come climbing down from my ladder, and she sees me, and she's going, "Sir, are you okay?" Of course, I don't know this little girl. I'm going, "Yeah, I'm okay."
And there's times that as we go, those stories of you're out in the field or we're out in the field, or we get to hear now we hear a tell of our guys, and what they're dealing with out in the field, and it's that commiseration, that foxhole mentality. And you talked about it a little bit of you didn't really have a plan whenever we came back in business and started. But as we've grown and looked at other companies and been coached by some of the best in the industry, if you had to zoom out and you're just tossing grenades here, what are your thoughts on the next 10 years for Yarbrough and Sons? Not just the industry, but just Yarbrough and Sons in general. If you had a roadmap of where we're going, what we're doing, what's that look like to you?
Yeah, and I'm pretty excited. Of course, PE firms are coming across the country buying up all the other, the heat and air companies that are there, and of course in our boat with you guys, kind of taking the leadership role. I think that we have so much more opportunity, than probably what I ever did. To where it kind of goes back to, where the PE firms that are coming in, they may be able to buy the equipment a little bit cheaper than we can, but it's our ability to make those decisions and move faster than what they are. Because Bryce, our marketing manager, he'll come in and he'll say, "Hey, I think we should do this or do that," and we have a decision within 3.2 seconds. It doesn't take long to make those decisions and to do those things, to whereas if you've got some corporate entity over the top of you, they're not going to be able to do that, and they're not going to be able to move near as quick. And so I think that the sky's the limit as to what we can go do. So I'm pretty excited. It's still hard to let go of stuff, though.
Easier and easier.
What do you think is the what in years of business and maybe moving forward? What do you think is going to be the or has been the hardest thing for you to let go? Apart from the phone number.
Yeah, apart from the phone number. I don't know. I don't ever want to get rid of the jingle. I'm sentimentally attached to the jingle. I know there was one time there was talk about, we need a new jingle. I'm going, no, we don't. No, we don't. And of course, in our jingle, funny story on that is we needed a jingle, and Kobe was in college at the time, and Kobe's pretty musically talented. And so anyway, so he can play about anything, and he sings and does all this. And of course, one of our salesmen that was here, he had a brother that was kind of the same way. And so I kind of put out a deal and said, okay, whoever can come up with a jingle, I'll give $250 to. And so anyway, so I tell Kobe and his high school buddies or college buddies or whatever it was at the time, and I tell Brent, our estimator, the same thing. Well, anyway, within 10 minutes, his brother calls back and sings the jingle exactly like it is today. Yep. Exactly like it is today. Yeah. And I played the banjo, and so the banjo's in there, so it's kind of hillbilly music, and so it just fit. It just fit me. And of course, when I say I play the banjo, I can play 6 songs. And so
it's better than me. I got one.
Yeah, and I can't play with anybody else. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to hear one of those 6 songs, that's all we got.
And that's not the genre that I play.
That is correct. That is correct. So yeah, but the hardest to let go. Probably one of the hardest things that has been for me is to set up a budgeting and marketing account to spend dollars. Because that's something you can't see. You can't eat that. To whereas in the 25 years prior, it was, me going out and talking to somebody and selling us, and so, I like to think I did a pretty good job of that, but we were stuck at that same dollar amount and couldn't get over that, and so probably giving up the ability to designate those marketing dollars and just consider them gone, and that's what we're going to do. That's probably the hardest.
And marketing, prior to, Colby and I Colby initially, and then Colby and I as a joint effort. Yes. The earlier-ish.
In 2015, it was very.
it was marketing back then for us
Yeah.
looked like radio trade out with a media company here in the Oklahoma City metro area, a couple outdoor billboard spots, but then it was sponsoring like the local high school football teams, just putting a banner out there, and so it was more goodwill than it was even marketing and advertising.
And I think it was a prideful thing too, whereas we didn't advertise a whole lot, but word of mouth. So we expected, our customers to help us in that word of mouth to push along. And that's probably my brother's fault. I listened to him on my marketing, and he was a welder / firefighter, and he had no marketing skills. But anyway, he was a great guy and loved me to pieces. Yeah. And so before we got the trucks wrapped, all we had on there was our name and our phone number, Yarbrough and Sons, Heat and Air, boom, phone number, state license, and that's what we did. So the trucks were pretty generic. We still had, I don't know, we might have had 20 of them running around at the time, and people would say that they seen our trucks, but we kind of took the Penn State approach in football. They've had the same uniform for a gazillion years, and, they wore the black cleats, white pants, whatever color the top is, and away they went, and we were kind of that same way too. So we prided ourselves, I'm not saying it's good, but we probably prided ourselves on spending less than 1% on marketing, and it worked well for us for a lot of years, but there's time to change.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. I think my favorite conversation, or at least one of the early conversations that Tucker and I had, were talking about, because we get calls all the time. It was like people see our trucks all the time, and that was a big,
right.
That was a big. It was like, well, they see our trucks all the time. The branding's working. So, and so Tucker and I kind of talked. Tucker was still in college at this point, and anyways, we kind of talked about, it was like maybe, updating the decal, updating the making the trucks look a little bit more lively, and
because we had a logo.
We did.
We had, it's pretty close to what it is
but
today.
it wasn't on the trucks.
It wasn't on the trucks.
And so we that was the first conversation I remember having, where digging in the heels on the marketing, I feel like has been the most consistent, because I think there's a saying that you guys have had is, we'd come in and we'd interview with, legacy marketing companies, like, the channel, the local stations here in Oklahoma City. And it's like, well, what's an impression? I can't, you say
you can't eat an impression.
You can't eat an impression. We don't know what that is. And so, but that's
To be fair, I still say that to Bryce.
Yes.
We cannot eat an impression, so
Yes.
we have to functionally
Yes.
make something happen.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that probably the best thing has become of all this is I'm pretty much out of the marketing stuff, and so I really don't see it until they come in and they'll say, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. What do you think? I'm going, okay, yeah. And of course, and the numbers don't lie. We've doubled in 5 years. So we're doing something. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So
and it's one of those things too where talking about, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit on the difficulty of relinquishing things and or just the pace at which you move for some stuff. And again, I know it boils back to that decision wasn't made in 2017, 2018. Mm-hmm. But another piece of it was, we went to the Service Nation boot camp and really started dialing in on our numbers, discovering that we need to spend money in marketing. And at that point, I had been diving into the financial. I look back on what I did prior to that, and I'm like, I don't know what I did to fill my day, but it took the whole time. It was, I was that pocket dragon. I just filled up whatever space I had. And now looking at our financials, looking at profit and loss and balance, and making those data driven decisions, that's where we're at now. Of even then, you were pretty quick to say yes to things, and I think it was that mentality of we're at our core. I think we're pirates. Mm-hmm. We see what everybody else is doing. We see what the industry is doing at large, and we just start raising our skull and crossbones, and all right, we're going to do it ourselves. Mm-hmm. We can do it better. Because I think that was a conversation that really, it was, you talk about leadership capital, that earned some leadership capital, for you, not that you needed to earn any, mm-hmm. but from my chair was, we had that meeting with one of the local news stations, and they were in here asking, for $500 for a 30-second spot. And both of us were just flabbergasted, going from not spending anything on marketing mm-hmm. to, holy cow, these people want $500 for one 30-second commercial. And as soon as they left, I had cut my chops on some marketing stuff. I got Google certified in college and just said yes to a lot of opportunities like that through schooling. And so I told Dad, I said, okay, if an impression's an impression, give me 3/4 of what we were about to give them, and I think I can make the needle move. And and that's really when that ball started rolling. Of okay, we're starting to put money into marketing, we're starting to put it into advertising, and really, looking back, I mean, it's kind of that saying of like, if you don't look back at your old social media posts and cringe just a little bit at your old ones, you haven't grown at all. It's that way for me whenever I look back at Yarbrough and Sons, like all of the crap that we were putting up on our Facebook and putting out there in the market, where I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we doing, Tuck? This is terrible. Even if it's just us doing it, I'm like, what are we doing? But it made the needle move. It started that conversation.
But I think too, on that same deal, whenever the TV people were here, and they said, okay, we can get you a gazillion impressions or whatever it is, and I may be wrong, but but I mean, I think they're counting the people that are watching their program at any given time, and you're going, you don't know whether they were watching or not. You don't know whether, there was any action that ever happened because of that. And then I think that kind of opened the door for us to start doing the Google stuff, and it seemed like at first everything that we did was trackable. And so I'm going, okay, yeah. And that was probably a turning point for me, to turn loose more of that stuff, because you could track it. We could say, okay, yeah, we're doing this. This is going here. This is doing this, and we're kind of getting this stuff back, so we could actually turn those impressions back into dollars to see what it was, because so many times it's hard to know where somebody gets your number to call you, and so you always fight with that, and I think another feather in our hat was probably you guys coming in and saying, okay, hey, you know what, let's bring Bryce on board, so now then we've got a full-time marketing guy, that manages all that and goes with it. And I don't know of very many other heat and air companies that have stepped out and have done that.
Especially at our size at the time.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
So anyway, kudos, Bryce. Good job.
Yeah.
That's true. We like Bryce.
I was gonna say, on the balance sheet, you show up. Hey, everything has to be a balance. You are a risk, but you're also an asset.
Yeah.
We got to be in balance.
Real quick, I want to give just a super quick blurb of how our marketing has evolved. So whenever we first started doing stuff, Mom and Dad would put stuff up in the papers.
Yeah, Mom and Dad were making memes.
Mom and Dad were doing memes before memes were a thing. And so there's, pardon me, there is a picture of me and Colby hanging upside down in our underwear, and I am 6 years old. And that was Dad is holding on to us upside down by our ankles. And so, anyway, but so going from that to I remember an ad with Tucker, and he was we were I don't know, channeling some Kool-Aid Man vibes and busting through some
stacked up all the filter boxes that we had back there in the back, and busted through them like the Kool-Aid Man, reminding people to
change their filter. And then fast forward and Bryce comes on board, and then we were doing kind of a round table thing. That was a ton of fun. And then we just shot some really high quality commercials recently. And so just to see that evolution of okay, hey, kind of to use the phrasing, you just raise our pirate flag, okay, we're going to do this ourselves and kind of make it our own, and it kind of gives us a unique flavor and taste even within the space. And I think that's a differentiator of just kind of the stuff that the credit to Bryce and bringing him on and all that stuff. I think that's something that you started that has set us apart, I think. And so it's been fun to be a part of and just kind of see.
I think so too.
Yeah. And I think that there's, talking about marketing stuff, asking that framework that we had for whenever you brought on Mac as a service and install manager, and then, we brought on another manager just to take over service. And that same framework was used in the decision to bring Bryce on. It was okay. I at that point Colby was doing full-time sales, so he had seen himself out of the functional portion of marketing. And so we look forward in our business of, okay, what seats are unfilled, how can we fill them, and where do we need to go? And so we basically just hired for our lack of ability to execute.
Yeah.
And
it was kind of plugging holes.
Yeah. So I had marketing, I had finance, I had CFO, I had HR on my plate. And I was like, all right, if we're going to grow, I have to focus more on marketing, and I can't give it the time that I need to, because I was Google certified in 2017, but now, at that time it's 2021, 22. When did we bring you on?
April 21.
April of 21.
And I want to note real quick, when Tuck was asking to hire me, he was like, hey, you like your job? And I was like, well, I'm going to be honest, Tuck, I don't want to feel like I have to justify my job every day I come in, and I was thinking specifically of you, Darren. I was like, I don't want Darren to, because he's not going to know what I'm doing, and so I was like, is he gonna like look at me and be like, what's this guy doing here? And so I told Tuck, I was like, I only want to come in if I have a guaranteed 40 hours of work. I don't want to come in on a full salary or whatever it looks like, and say like, and try to make up those hours. And boy, was I wrong. Busier than I've ever been.
And here we are on a Saturday.
No, I think it was funny. Bryce, you were joking. It was like, I'm a high risk, but the token of that saying is, high risk, high reward. So you are also you're a gift to Yarbroughs, and we appreciate
that. I think too, on that same token though, it's because we give Bryce the freedom to go do whatever it is that he wants to do. Pretty much so in the marketing world. So yeah. I mean, because I don't know anything about marketing. I was the guy who spent less than 1% on marketing. So Bryce comes to the table with so much more stuff. And some stuff we have done and it's been a home run. And some stuff he's done has been a bomb. I can't think of
we had one. We have one bomb.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. But yeah,
Sarah McLachlan. It was our Sarah McLachlan video of trying.
Oh
Hey, it made us laugh. Right?
It did. It made us laugh.
Well, and that's that was kind of that
75% of it.
That decision factor was whenever we hit that point, recognizing that of like, okay, I don't know. And I told Bryce this was, I don't know what it looks like. I just know that there will be ample things for you to do because I'm not giving it the time it needs. And if we're going to grow and reach that next phase, we have to make this investment now rather than outsourcing to more vendors, creating more contacts and more headaches that we have to deal with. And then ultimately breaking up with those vendors because we have underperformance issues going on. And I joke and say that we're great at two things. We're really good at giving agency to our people, but we're also really good at hiring a bunch of control freaks. We hire people who own their domain and make sure that that's their focus. And so the framework is in. I think it's like you talked about way earlier. It's one and the same. The growth. You don't get the knowledge apart from the wisdom. It's you those two things walk in lockstep.
Right. But I think the only difference between me and everybody else in the company is most of the people don't see my mistakes. They're there, but I cover them up. It's not how many mistakes you make; it's how fast you recover. And so when I screw up, I'm pretty good at recovering. And I realize that in different chairs in the company, when somebody screws up, there's dollars involved, and it comes to the top, and you see it. And that goes to the same thing too. And I think I own my mistakes as well, even though somebody doesn't see them. Going, okay, hey, I screwed up. I shouldn't have done this. And so giving people the ability to screw up is, it's okay. It's kind of like what I think Tucker said it earlier. I don't care what we do. It might have been Colby.
Yeah.
I don't care what we do as long as we do it on purpose. So I mean, if you give somebody a refund on a whole new condenser or something, going, well, okay, yeah, I probably wouldn't have done that, but what was your reasoning behind it? Did we do that on purpose? Then, okay, here we go. So I mean, and I think that gives us wasta with that customer. And I think it also gives me wasta with whoever screwed up. Knowing that we're going to have their back. So that may be part of the deal that separates us from other companies.
And I think something too is because I think out of the three of us, I probably shadowed you the closest, just because whenever I first came on in 2016, you were teaching me how to build houses. Now I'm in residential and commercial HVAC sales. But, as we were building houses, I was working in sheet metal and all this kind of stuff. And I remember following you to several commercial jobs and just seeing you there was something maybe it was an unintended mistake or something happened there, and something that you said that stuck out to me. I don't even know if you remember saying this, but it's, if you're pretty quick to fess up, people are generally pretty quick to forgive you, for that. And so it's, you never try to hide it. You're like, hey, you know what? I messed up here, but here's how I'm going to make it right. I think anytime that I've messed up from either just the sales side or something like that, communicating to you and the customer, be like, hey, you know what? I screwed up. Here's my action steps to make it right. And generally people are pretty accommodating. For whenever you take ownership of the mistake, and then you're actively giving a plan to rectify that mistake and make it better. And so I think that's something that even shadowing you, that's I've learned from that. And so, but it's been good. And I think a lot of people in leadership position, I think that's a worthy point to bring up, because I think that's something to be learned is to, take ownership of the mistakes, and then, but not just to like take ownership, but then it's not going to go anywhere. Like give a plan, an action plan to move forward beyond that.
Right.
Is super important.
And as the guy sitting in the corner office, I like that. If somebody screws up or whatever, somebody steps through a ceiling or whatever, going, hey, I stepped through a ceiling. I've talked to the customer. We're good. I've called the sheetrock repair guy. He's coming. So it happens and we move on. Anything can be fixed. I always tell everybody that we can fix anything with enough time and money. So don't try to hide.
And I think of too, though, like how many things, and this is just in the short little time that we've all been here, is how many times now, and I think I sit closer to it than you guys do probably. Like, y'all see it on your jobs, whereas just I cut the checks on it. Is how many mistakes, how many things that go on, that don't reach your desk, and that we're out there fixing and making things right, that don't reach you, and how cool that is now that we've empowered our leaders to a place where, hey, they know we're gonna go make it right. We're gonna do the thing. We're gonna bite the bullet. And we're gonna make it right. Right. And it's not reaching your desk, which is it's got to be initially a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But
I think that those managers know, that if they're doing things on purpose and taking care of a customer, that they're not going to get any static from me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that goes back to, I'm going to use that word, but that wasta that you built, that I'm struggling to think of the other words for it. Yeah. But just that you built with those key managers.
You give it to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
When you've leaned out, you've pushed your chips to the center, and it's no longer, hey, these are mine. It's
right.
Here's the pile the company has to operate on.
Yeah.
Let's use it wisely.
And I think that goes back to, sharing the numbers with the guys. Whereas, every month we share the numbers with the guys, whether we were profitable or not, so that the guys know, they know what we make, and of course, and we're sharing that back with our team, and doing that, so I think that if you're doing that, you're just opening up another book, to them so that they know what you're doing. And that kind of gives them a little bit of the why, why we're doing what we're doing, so I think being open.
I think when your company gets to a certain size, you're always kind of thinking, culture exists whether you want it to or not. If you have a group of people working in the same building, you have a culture there. I think that it becomes a bigger deal whenever you have 50 plus people working for you. From your point of view, you've just been working, putting your head down. I don't think you've thought a whole lot about the culture you were trying to develop, but you have developed a really great culture. What does that mean to you now? Like, what are you trying to do to foster a great culture? In the beginning, I didn't think too much about it. We just had stuff that had to get done. And so I guess I was lucky enough or fortunate enough to hire people that had the same mindset that I did. So the culture just came, which is probably not true. Some it did, but then there's others, where, guys have been here that maybe didn't have that same mindset when they come, but maybe we've won them over, we've converted them over. They're going, hey, you know what, maybe Darren's not a knucklehead, and the way that we're doing things is the best way to go. But I probably think about it more now that there's 50 of us running around than I did when there was 20. And that's probably because I don't have the same relationship with the 50 that I had with the 20. Because I can talk to 20 people a day, but I can't give 50 people 10 minutes a day. I don't have any time. So that's probably been a tough one, as we're growing and getting bigger, to whereas I can't spend the time with each and every one of them to get to know, to know them, to know their family, to know their problems.
I think too. So this is here my college coming to work a little bit for me, but culture. The argument is like, did people make culture? Did culture make people? It's kind of a chicken or the egg sort of question when it comes to culture. And so, and just from my observation, it seems like a lot of the things that you just have innate within yourself, has been extracted, and it's a part of that culture now. So that empowerment of those leaders, the hey, we're going to take care of people, that sort of mentality has become, as an attribute of you, has become enculturated. I guess if I want to use like an adjective for it, but
I don't know if it's a word.
I don't know if it's a word, but it's going to be for my point.
I'll take new adjectives for $100. Bob.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Jeopardy. But I think that's been, at least from my observation of it, is like, because from the top leader, like the culture is going to stem from that person. And so the culture you have is in some form or fashion a reflection of who the leader is and who they are. So the fact that Yarbrough and Sons has a good culture and people have stuck around for as long as it has is because I think it's because of your leadership and who you are as a person has trickled down to even the lowest levels of stuff. So people feel comfortable. So like, okay, hey, I feel like I can fess up quickly. I'm not going to get reamed, if I do this stuff.
But do you think it goes back to, the sifting process through the hiring process that we do? Because now then, we're not looking for the HVAC guys, from the guys who come from tech, the guys who come from Okmulgee, the guys who have had formal training as much. Oh yeah, if we got somebody that come out of VOTAC that knew what they were doing and that fit our culture, we would hire them in the spot. But if somebody doesn't know diddly squat, like I did, like I said earlier, I knew you turn a switch on, the light come on when I started. When we go through that hiring process, if we can find somebody with a good attitude, that we're halfway home with the culture. If we do our job of sifting through the hiring process and can see through and get there.
And in the hiring process, we just gotta have a Hall of Fame batting average. That's all we gotta have.
That's all you gotta have.
We just gotta have a 350. Yes,
yeah.
That's all we.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite sayings that we've kind of, I don't know where I got this, or because I don't think it's original to me,
right?
But you hire for attitude, and you can teach aptitude. That sort of mentality with it.
Yeah. And then how do you feel like? So we talk about use scripture a lot and whatnot. How do you feel like your relationship with Jesus, with God, has affected a family and company dynamic and the culture that we have now, and the success that we have?
I think it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
I think of the service industry, being in the HVAC business, goes hand in hand, with the dude walking down the road and seeing the guy in the ditch.
Yeah.
He picks the ditch up, takes him to the hotel and says, "Hey, take care of this guy.
Yeah.
I'll come back and pay the bill."
Yeah.
And so our world and our walk through the HVAC, through the service industry, is pretty much hand in hand with that. Of course, we can do the same things, to the people that we work with and we work for. We can help somebody out when they're having a difficult time. Gosh, we've had, guys that's gone through COVID and, their wives go through COVID or, and just the different things that, that people have, the problems that they have, and that gives us an opportunity, and we're in a position to love on those people, so like Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And loving your neighbor as yourself is what we do to the 50 people that are here. So we can do that, and then from that, those tentacles that stretch off from that is, hey, you know what, and loving our customer as ourself may be something as simple as do what's right. If they've got a compressor that's a week out of warranty, eat the compressor. There's certain times that we can't do that, but loving our neighbors ourselves to those customers, maybe doing this or doing that, or just a step above what the average heating air company might do. Right. So I think they're twisted together pretty tight.
And so with all of this, we're looking at our story. And if you had to, just kind of in closing here, just for everybody, if you had to nail it down, just a couple ideas, maybe even, of what are things that our stupidity that we've had through the years, that if you had to say, all right, hey, company doing $1.5 million and trying to get your family involved, here's something you could do. Here's something that learn from my mistake, or the company who's at the $4 million looking to accelerate. Here's something that we used. Do you have any final thoughts on that of things that we can help other companies apply to their success?
Yeah, I think the number one thing would be to love your neighbors yourself. And then I would go back, and if I could talk to $1 Million Darren, I would tell him to implement those strategies of the KPIs, knowing how much one service tech should be able to produce, knowing how much one install crew should be able to produce, knowing how many jobs a estimator can be over. And our world is a little bit different because our estimators act like a job superintendent a lot of times too. So our estimators see the job from start to finish, whereas a lot of companies don't. And I can see a time coming up, that may be something that we have to change too. But I think following those that have gone before, grab a hold of those and follow. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Because that's what I did pretty much. We would rob and duplicate occasionally, but not like we do now. And luckily, we know folks that are bigger than us that we can take and we can rob and duplicate from. So if you're a $1 million company, go find you a $2 million company and see what they're doing. If you're a $3 million company, go find a $5 million company. And us, we're a $5 million company. No, I take that back. We were in 2018. Now then we're a $10 million company. Hey, some $20 million company, come see us. There's things that we want to know that we don't do. Because they're out there and they get it done. Right. So yeah.
I think in that same token too, it's overcoming the fear of not getting an answer, or not even not getting an answer, but maybe even being seen as like less than or less less knowledgeable than. Is my call to other companies would be, even if it's in your own market, like that is I think talk about the Good Samaritan and all that, like even if it's in your own market, companies are pretty quick to help you succeed. They'll give you a nugget, they'll give you something. And so finding those people and not being afraid to ask the dumb question, not being afraid to be the dumb one at the table, because odds are, and it's one of those things of hindsight, is your teachers told you this in class all the time, is the only dumb question is the one that doesn't get asked. And if you're sitting at the table, if you're sitting at the dinner table at night and banging your head against a wall trying to figure out how do I overcome this business mistake or this business hurdle or anything like that, odds are all of your peers around the same size are also doing it. Nobody's asking anybody questions because we have this intrinsic belief that for some reason it's a industry trade secret. And there's some stuff that companies won't share, but like the Service Nation, like the Blue Collar Group, like the many best practices groups that are out there, is asking people of any size questions. Man, there's knowledge everywhere. Talking to companies smaller than you can you get your teeth kicked in, because they're taking care of their people and their customers better than maybe we are in a certain capacity. And so it's asking those questions regardless of size, regardless of market, and trying to have that understanding that success isn't a fixed pie, that there's enough slices for everybody.
Yeah, I think so too. Go get your info from the Service Nation. Go get your info from the Best Practices Group. Get off of the owners and technicians deal on Facebook, because everybody's just so they lie and they're just cutting everybody's feet out from underneath them. So find some folks that can mentor you and use them. They'll share.
Yeah. I think one thing that separates, maybe not one thing, but one of the things that separates successful companies from not successful ones is the ability to ask good questions and not be afraid to ask questions. And the, I feel like we have this desire to have this image that we project out into the world. And so we don't want to seem like, we're like, oh, well, I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm doing, but in reality, I don't know what I'm doing. And so just being able to ask those questions, I think is super important.
Yeah. Cool. I think as we kind of close it out, Dad, I think I speak for both Tucker and Will whenever I say this. We're being grateful for you is we don't have the words to be able to describe how thankful we are for you and the work that you put in to growing Yarbrough & Sons to where it is today. And I am very blessed to be in a chair that we are in to sit on our pirate ship with you and be able to take on the day to day and tackle what the next 10 years for Yarbrough & Sons looks like. And I'm super thankful for you, and I'm grateful that we get to do it on a daily basis. And so we appreciate you. Thank you for hanging out with us.
You guys are too kind.
Well, in closing, please rate, review, subscribe, leave us your thoughts, reach out. If you have questions, we'd love to tackle them, give thoughts. We don't give answers, only responses, because nothing is concrete. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Blue Collar Bros, and we'll see you next time.
Deal.
Thank you.
See ya.